My name is Lucy Miller. I'm 32 years old. On my birthday, in the middle of Romanos, the restaurant where I've been working as a waitress for 3 years, my mother-in-law handed me a pink envelope adorned with silver butterflies. Everyone thought it was a congratulatory gesture. But when I opened it, the entire room fell silent. Inside was a divorce paper. My husband, Eric, even held up his phone to record the moment, waiting for me to break down so he could make a joke of me in front of the family. But instead of crying, I calmly signed my name right in front of them and then smiled, saying, "Thank you, this is exactly the gift I needed." Have you ever had the people you trusted most turn a special day into an insult? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, please hit like, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our next stories. From the very first day I stepped into the Miller family, I felt the cold distance Eleanor, my mother-in-law, created. She always looked at me with a mix of pity and contempt, as if my existence was a mistake her son had made. I worked at a small Italian restaurant, a job I valued because it allowed me to be independent and support myself before marrying Eric. But to Eleanor, it was just an excuse to emphasize my inferiority in front of everyone. At family gatherings, she would introduce me in a way that made everyone at the table uncomfortable. "This is Lucy, Eric's wife. She works in the service industry." The way she paused before saying service seemed to let everyone fully grasp its meaning. Soon after, a few people would scoff and others would raise their eyebrows in agreement. I tried to smile, but it felt like 1,000 needles pricking at my heart. In the beginning, Eric would defend me. He'd quickly add, "Lucy works at Romanos, a well-known Italian restaurant. She's really good at customer service." In those moments, I felt a bit of relief. But gradually, Eric started changing. I don't know if it was because of his mother's influence or because he was uncomfortable with the gossip, but he began to distance himself. When someone asked about my job, Eric would give vague answers. She's still working there for now, looking for a better opportunity." That seemingly harmless remark felt like a knife in my chest. The word temporary made the job I worked so hard at seem meaningless, unworthy of being mentioned. The most painful memory for me was that Christmas evening. Eleanor's living room was lavishly decorated. A tree nearly touching the ceiling, warm yellow lights, and beautifully wrapped gift boxes piled beneath it. When it was my turn to open a gift, Eleanor handed me a package wrapped in newspaper, which seemed lost among the luxurious red velvet and gold ribbon-wrapped presents everyone else received. I fought to suppress my embarrassment and tore open the newspaper. Inside was a thick hardcover book, deep blue, titled, "How to Be More Professional." The room froze for a moment, and then a few awkward chuckles broke the silence. Chloe, Eric's younger sister, draped in a silk scarf from Eleanor, looked at me with a half-smile. "Mom's so thoughtful, she always knows what others need." I pursed my lips, pretending to read the author's name on the cover to avoid the pitying gazes from the others. Eric sat next to me, but he remained silent. He didn't defend me like he used to. That silence was worse than any sarcasm. From that day on, I began to realize one painful truth. I would never be truly considered a member of this family. I had no place in the world that Eleanor controlled down to the smallest detail. The following family events only confirmed this. At Eric's birthday party, she introduced me to his friends as the girl still trying to find her way. When I brought a dish to the table, Eleanor grabbed a friend's hand and spoke loud enough for me to hear. "I hope one day my son will wake up and realize he deserves more than this." Her words cut deeply into my self-esteem. I started avoiding family parties, but Eric would scold me. "You need to try to fit in. Mom's strict, but she really wants what's best for us." I could see the distance growing wider. The man who once promised to hold my hand through thick and thin was now choosing silence, standing by his mother's side. There was one time when Eric and I were about to head to dinner at Eleanor's. I hesitated and asked, "Do you ever feel embarrassed by my job?" Eric paused, then changed the subject. That silent response said it all. I still remember one winter evening when the party ended and I stood alone on the porch. The cold wind cut through me, but my heart felt colder. I looked through the window and saw Eleanor laughing and chatting with Chloe and Eric. Meanwhile, I stood like a shadow on the outside. The contempt didn't stop at words. It crept into every small gesture. One time I brought a homemade dessert to a family dinner. Eleanor tasted it, put it down and said, "Well, it's okay. But the country club makes it much better." Chloe laughed and added, "Mom's right, Lucy. Maybe you should take a few cooking classes at least to match Eric's status." I felt my heart weigh down, but I still forced a polite smile. Through each event, each remark, each gift full of implied meaning, I understood that Eleanor would never accept me. In her eyes, I was the stain on the family, the burden pulling her son down. And the most painful thing was that Eric was slowly starting to believe that too. That night, the house was eerily quiet. Eric had gone to bed after a long day at work, but I was still cleaning in the kitchen. As I walked upstairs, I heard murmuring coming from the living room. The yellow light spilled through the crack in the door. I stopped, about to turn away to maintain my politeness, but hearing my name in their phone conversation made me freeze. Eleanor's voice was clear and firm, tinged with a cruelty she rarely hid when I wasn't around. "I pray Eric wakes up soon. He deserves a successful wife, not a waitress holding back his career." The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. My hands trembled, my fingers clutching the banister until they turned white. I had grown used to her jabs, used to her contemptuous glances. But hearing her say it, thinking I wasn't there, with such relief, satisfaction, as if it were a fact, shattered my heart. I continued to listen as she went on. "Eric has potential. He could go far in his career, build a name in the accounting firm. But Lucy? She doesn't bring anything but trouble. I can't let my son be buried by a wrong marriage." Each word, each sigh she let out, scraped at my soul. At one moment I wanted to walk in, face her and say, "I'm listening." But I couldn't. I backed away, sat down on the stairs in the darkness, holding my knees, feeling like the life had been drained from me. That night I almost stayed awake. Lying next to Eric, hearing his steady breathing, I felt suffocated. Did this man, my husband, know what his mother thought? And did he agree? The next morning, as Eric was tying his tie, preparing to go to work, I couldn't hold back anymore. "I heard what your mom said last night." Eric briefly hesitated before changing the subject. "What did you hear?" "She said you were a waitress holding back your career. That you deserve someone better." Eric turned around, his face showing discomfort. "Lucy, Mom's just worried about our future. She says that because she wants the best life for you." I choked back my words. "And what about me? Am I not part of I've tried, I've worked tirelessly to keep everything stable. Why am I always seen as a burden?" Eric stepped closer, placed a hand on my shoulder, but his gaze avoided mine. "I know you've worked hard. But Mom has a point. If you had a more stable job, a proper position, people would accept you more." That answer was the final knife that severed the last thread of trust left. "So the problem isn't who you are, but what you do to gain their recognition. Do you also think I'm not good enough?" Eric sighed, not saying anything further. He gently let go of my hand and turned away. It felt as if the floor beneath my feet was collapsing. All the efforts to fit in, all the times I endured their criticism, ultimately hadn't changed anything. Not only did Eleanor not trust me, but even the man I shared my life with was starting to believe I was a mistake. That evening, I found myself sitting alone in the kitchen. I flipped through my little notebook, the one where I wrote down all my plans and aspirations. The blank page opened before me, but my mind was a dark void. I remembered the times Eleanor publicly humiliated me in front of relatives. I remembered Eric's hesitant glances when anyone asked about me. And I could still hear every word she said the night before, like a final verdict. For the first time in my marriage, I stopped thinking about how to be accepted. Instead, I thought, how to save myself. I silently promised myself, I will find my own path, one that doesn't need their judgment or approval. Eleanor wants me to disappear from Eric's life? Fine. But I won't disappear in the shadows as she hopes. I will rise, and one day they will have to see my true worth. After overhearing Eleanor's conversation, I entered a crisis phase. Every morning when I woke up and saw Eric getting ready for work in his neat suit while I put on my worn restaurant uniform and old shoes, the contrast became even more glaring. Eleanor's words haunted me, a waitress holding back his career. I didn't want her to be right. I needed to prove my worth. I started submitting applications everywhere. Insurance offices, real estate companies, banks, even a receptionist position at a dental clinic. For each resume, I typed and retyped dozens of times, trying to turn my serving experience into customer management skills or high-pressure situation handling abilities. But in the education section, it always said, high school diploma. The responses came quickly and ruthlessly. Thank you for your interest, but we need candidates with a college degree. Or, we've chosen someone with more relevant experience. One day I opened my email to find 5 rejection letters at once. Sitting there staring at the glowing screen, my vision blurred. Once I interviewed at an insurance company. The short-haired woman glanced over my resume, then set it down and asked, "So, what do you think your experience as a waitress can bring to a contract management position?" I shakily answered about communication skills and handling difficult customers, but she looked at her watch and interrupted, "Thank you, we'll contact you if there's a match." As I left the room, I knew there wouldn't be a call. I sat in the car crying until my makeup smudged. I decided to enroll in night classes at the community college. The acceptance letter was a new ray of hope. In the evenings after my shift at Romanos, I hurried to class, eating a sandwich while taking notes. Basic subjects like accounting and business communication made me feel like I was taking a small step away from the waitress shadow. I got high marks and received praise from professors. Once Mr. Martinez even called me Student of the Week for my essay analyzing customers. But when I brought my report card home to show Eric, he murmured, "Good job, but community college is just the beginning. Don't expect too much." Eleanor was even more direct. "Anyone can take a few night classes. If you're serious, you need to get into a real university." I bit my lip, put the report card in a drawer. Those grades and pluses meant nothing to them. Finances became a heavy burden. I wanted to look more professional, so I bought a simple black dress for interviews. When I saw the bill, Eric frowned. "This dress costs over $100. Do you really need to waste money like this? You don't even have the job yet." I was speechless. He wasn't the man who used to compliment me on how beautiful I looked in a simple uniform when we first started dating. Now every expense of mine was scrutinized. He held tight to the credit card, giving me a small allowance each week, just enough to cover basic needs. I felt like a child being controlled, not a wife on equal terms. My health deteriorated. The long nights studying, the early mornings at work, and the constant pressure of rejections kept me up at night. I quickly lost weight, my face became hollow. My colleagues at Romanos asked, "Lucy, are you okay? You look so pale." I smiled and lied that I was staying up late to study. But in reality I felt empty, drained. One evening, while washing dishes after dinner, I heard Eleanor speak softly to Eric in the living room. "She looks so tired. You need to wake up, don't let yourself get held back for life." Eric remained quiet, not protesting. His lack of response hurt more than her cruel words. I began to ask myself, do I have any value? Is it worth fighting for? Every evening, sitting in front of the mirror, I saw a stranger looking back at me, deep-set eyes, dry, brittle hair. I remembered the old Lucy, strong, independent, willing to take on 2 shifts to save money for a small apartment. Where had that woman gone? One late afternoon, after a long shift at Romanos, I stepped into the apartment just as my phone rang. A strange number from New York appeared on the screen. Normally, I would have ignored it, but for some reason that day I picked up. "Hello, is this Lucy Miller?" A deep, professional voice came through the line. "Yes, this is she. I'm Jessica Martinez from Human Resources at Grand Horizon Hotel, a 5-star hotel in Manhattan. We've reviewed your resume and your customer service experience at Romanos really impressed us. I'm calling to ask if you'd be interested in interviewing for the position of guest relations coordinator." I froze for a few seconds. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking so much that I almost dropped the phone. For the first time after dozens of rejection letters, there was a voice that didn't look down on me. On the contrary, she even used the words "impressed." "Yes, I'm very interested," I answered, my voice shaking with emotion. The phone interview took place the next day. They asked me about handling difficult customers, staying calm during peak hours, and how I dealt with mistakes made by colleagues. Those questions that seemed difficult made me feel unusually confident. Everything they asked was something I dealt with every day at Romanos. When it ended, Jessica laughed and said, "I feel like I'm talking to someone who's already worked in this role at a higher level. We'll be in touch soon." 3 days later, an email popped up with the subject line, "Official offer, Grand Horizon Hotel." I opened it, my eyes blurred from the sparkling text before me. A starting salary of $50,000 a year with free housing right on the employee campus, full health insurance and retirement plans. I stayed there for a long time, then started crying. For the first time in years, someone saw my value. The skills Eleanor had once called insignificant were now the reason a luxury hotel was offering me the chance to change my life. That evening at dinner, Eric talked about a big contract his company had just signed. Eleanor sat across from me, nodding with satisfaction while I stayed quiet. I wanted to shout, "I have good news too." But I kept it a secret. This opportunity, I wanted to turn it into my comeback exactly on my upcoming birthday. In the days that followed, I lived in a parallel world. During the day, I still wore my Romanos uniform, waiting tables, serving drinks, listening to complaints. But in my bag, I always carried a printed copy of the job offer from Grand Horizon, folded neatly like a treasure. Whenever I felt tired, I would touch it as if to remind myself, I'm about to break free from this endless cycle. Maria, the head chef at Romanos, noticed I was in a better mood. She asked, "What's making you so happy, Lucy? You used to look so down." I smiled and answered softly, "I just feel more hopeful." She patted me on the back. "Keep that hope. It'll take you farther than anyone thinks." Meanwhile, Eleanor suddenly became unusually friendly. She started calling me dear, asking about my schedule, and even suggested throwing a birthday party for me at Romanos. I was stunned. The woman who had refused to come to the place where I worked now initiated the idea. "What do you think, Lucy?" she asked sweetly. "Sure. That sounds nice." I hesitated. Eric seemed mysterious, saying, "Your birthday this year will be one you'll never forget. Trust me." I looked at him, both hopeful and anxious. I had no idea what they were secretly planning, but I already had my own plan in mind. On the evenings in the bedroom, I quietly practiced how to announce the news. In front of the mirror, I smiled and said, 3 days ago I received a job offer from Grand Horizon Hotel in New York." The words rang out, full of power, sending chills down my spine. I imagined Eleanor's face, Eric's shock, and Chloe with her phone recording me. The morning of my birthday, I chose to buy an elegant navy dress. Not too fancy, but enough to highlight a professional appearance. As I walked out of the fitting room, the sales associate complimented, "You look like a hotel manager." If they knew I was about to become exactly that, they would probably be even more surprised. The night before my birthday, Eric unexpectedly hugged me from behind and whispered, "I love you. Tomorrow you'll remember this day forever." I knew he was hiding something, but I was also keeping a secret much bigger than his. As my birthday approached, the atmosphere in the Miller family suddenly shifted, leaving me confused. Eleanor, the woman who hadn't called me by my name correctly for the past 2 years, suddenly spoke to me in a sweet voice. "Dear, are you free this week? I want to discuss something special." I almost dropped the dish I was wiping. The word dear coming from her lips sounded so unfamiliar that it sent shivers down my spine. But Eleanor continued with an unusually gentle expression. "Your birthday is coming up. I think the family should do something to celebrate. Let's have dinner together. How about Romanos?" The woman who once considered Romanos a lower-class place not worth stepping foot in now wanted to host my birthday there? I hesitated but then nodded. Part of me wanted to believe that, finally, she had started recognizing my efforts. Eric was becoming more and more mysterious. He often smiled half-heartedly, glancing at his phone and shaking his head when I asked. One evening, when I tried to figure out what he was planning, Eric pulled me into his arms and whispered, "Tomorrow will be a day you'll never forget. Trust me." His words stirred my heart. I wondered, had he and his mother finally acknowledged my efforts, wanting to give me the recognition I deserved? Or was there another plan I couldn't yet figure out? Chloe, Eric's sister, also suddenly became more friendly. Usually, she rarely participated in family gatherings, always making excuses about being busy. But this time, Chloe called me, her voice excited. "Hey Lucy, I'm really looking forward to your birthday dinner. I'll bring my new camera. I have to capture all the special moments." I hesitated. Part of me felt warmed, thinking maybe they finally wanted me to feel like I belonged. But deep down, my intuition told me something wasn't right. Chloe had never wanted to record any events with me. Why was she so enthusiastic this time? The day before the party, Eleanor called me. Her voice was gentle with a hint of excitement. "Lucy, remember to wear something nice but not too formal. We want a relaxed and cozy evening." "Yes, I'll prepare." Every word from Eleanor, every smile from Chloe, every mysterious glance from Eric. It all felt like strange pieces of a puzzle. They spoke in a friendly tone, but I had the feeling I was walking on a tightrope, one gentle breeze away from falling into the abyss. That night, I opened my drawer to take out the job offer letter from Grand Horizon, gazing at it under the yellow light. Everything around me might be a trap, but this letter was my weapon. I slipped it into my purse, determined to keep it secret until the right moment. On my birthday morning, Eric surprised me with a bouquet of red roses. He handed them to me with a beaming smile. "Happy birthday, my love. Tonight is going to be very special." I smiled, but my heart was full of doubt. Eric hugged me, but his embrace no longer felt as warm as before. Seemed like a cover for something he was hiding. In the afternoon, I chose the elegant navy dress I had prepared earlier. Standing in front of the mirror, I whispered, "Tonight, Lucy, you won't be the one humiliated anymore." When I walked down the stairs, Eric looked me up and down, nodding. "You look beautiful. Definitely a special day." He took my hand and led me to the car. I noticed he quickly typed a few lines into his phone and slipped it into his pocket, his face showing a fleeting moment of tension. On the way to Romanos, the atmosphere in the car was strangely silent. I sat beside him, gripping my purse tightly, the letter inside it. When we arrived, I saw Eleanor and Chloe already sitting at the familiar corner table. Their eyes lit up when they saw us walk in, but the smiles on their faces seemed too forced, too perfect to be natural. Eleanor stood up, opening her arms. "Lucy, dear. Happy birthday." I awkwardly returned her hug, the strong scent of her perfume making it hard to breathe. Chloe had her camera ready, adjusting the angle carefully. I tried to reassure myself that perhaps I was being overly suspicious. Maybe this time was truly a kind gesture. But when Eleanor's gaze met mine, I caught a glimmer in the corner of her eye. Not love, but something like a calculated expectation. The dinner began, the food was served. Eleanor chatted cheerfully, Chloe laughed continuously, and Eric seemed awkward but still tried to act relaxed. I stayed mostly silent, listening to the snippets of conversation, my heart filled with a sense of unease. Everything was too perfect, too smooth. And I knew behind that exterior, a plot was surely unfolding. The birthday dinner at Romanos that night truly became a performance, and I was the main character in it, but not in the way I had imagined. The restaurant space was decorated magnificently with warm lights, candles glowing on each table and soothing music playing in the background. But within that cozy atmosphere, I felt like I was standing in the middle of a courtroom, and everyone around me were judges waiting to deliver their verdict. When Eric and I walked in, Eleanor was already sitting there, smiling brightly, but that smile couldn't hide the scheming in her eyes. Chloe stood beside her, holding her new camera, her gaze shining with strange excitement, as if she had been planning this moment for a long time. I felt my body go numb, but I didn't let fear take over. I forced a smile, though my lips stiffened from the tension. The air around me seemed to freeze, with all eyes on me. Suddenly, Eleanor stood up, holding a pink envelope decorated with silver butterflies, exactly like the one she had prepared for my birthday. "Lucy, you know this family always cares about your future," she said sweetly, though there was a hint of mockery in her every word. She turned to her friends, smiling lightly, then continued, "This is a special gift from all of us." As soon as she finished speaking, I realized what was coming. Everyone was looking at me, waiting, and I knew they were waiting for my failure. I looked at the envelope in Eleanor's hand, feeling like something heavy was pressing on my chest. I opened the envelope. When I looked at the first sheet of paper, my eyes went dark. Divorce papers. They had everything prepared, all they needed was for me to sign. No explanation, no question. Just a simple order, the conclusion they thought I wouldn't be able to overcome. I heard my own breath grow ragged, and the strange sound of Eleanor laughing lightly, as if she had already won this battle. Chloe was nearby, her eyes fixed on me through her phone's screen, continuously recording every moment. I knew she, along with the entire family, was waiting for an emotional outburst from me. But I didn't follow the script they had written for me. I bit my lip, looked up, and stared into Eleanor's eyes. I was no longer the Lucy she thought would bow her head and endure. She couldn't guess how I would react, and I couldn't guess what would come next. With a slow motion, I took the pen Eleanor handed me and signed the divorce papers. Everyone's eyes widened in surprise. I placed the pen down, then pulled out a letter from my purse, the one I had carefully hidden for so long. "In 2 weeks, I'll be moving to New York. I said, my voice steady without a hint of trembling. "I've found a place that knows how to appreciate me, something none of you have ever done." The entire restaurant, the guests who had been enjoying their meals, suddenly paused. An inexplicable silence covered the space. Looking at the stunned faces of Eleanor, Chloe, and Eric, I felt a pang in my chest. But at the same time, I felt freer than I ever had. The first applause came from the back, and then, as if on cue, the entire restaurant erupted into a wave of enthusiastic applause. My colleagues from Romanos stood up, clapping with unceasing support. The regular customers, the ones who had watched me work day in and day out, now joined in the applause as if I were one of their own. My head spun. While my family was drowning in embarrassment, my colleagues and regulars stood up and applauded, praising me. That was the recognition I had never imagined would come from them, the ones who had once considered me unworthy. Eleanor lowered herself into a chair, her face ashen. She still held the camera, but her gaze was no longer victorious. The whole family now realized I was no longer the weak woman they could manipulate. They didn't understand how much I had changed, and they didn't know that the failure they predicted was the very beginning of the success I had long been seeking. Chloe looked over, but her gaze had changed. The whole family was now in the trap they thought they had set for me. Eric looked at me, his expression a mix of shock and doubt. The whole room sank into an indescribable silence, with only the applause from the back from my colleagues and regular customers, reverberating like a different stream from the tense atmosphere unfolding. "Are you really leaving?" Eric asked, his voice hoarse as if he couldn't believe what was happening right before his eyes. I felt nothing but the coldness that had quietly infiltrated my heart over the months. I had once loved him, thought he was the only one who could offer me safety. But now he was the one who couldn't see me, couldn't see my true worth. "It's not leaving," I answered, my voice steady without a hint of wavering. "I'm free." I saw Eric freeze. His hands hanging limp, no reaction like I had seen in all those years. That was his failure. A man who once promised to go through every trial with me, but now couldn't stand by me when I needed him the most. Eleanor sat frozen, her mouth moving but unable to say a word. She looked at me and the space around her, then the smile she had tried to maintain suddenly disappeared. The sarcasm in her eyes also faded, replaced by confusion. She couldn't understand that I didn't rely on her approval, nor did I require her pity or contemptuous gaze to live a fulfilling life. Chloe, still holding the camera, kept her eyes locked on me. But I knew she no longer felt proud. She was recording this moment, but it had turned into evidence of the cruelty of her own family. "Are you really leaving?" Chloe asked, her voice no longer filled with triumph. She held the camera, her hands slightly trembling. I didn't answer. Those words to me now were unnecessary questions. I already had everything I needed: a new job, a new life. And above all, I had freedom. I grabbed the handbag I had prepared long ago. It was the only item I had carried throughout this time, an item that held my past, my present, and my future. Placing the letter from Grand Horizon in my bag, I felt a steadiness from within. The party was still going on, but I no longer wanted to stay. I didn't need the presence of those who had once been my family. What had they given me? A family I had to struggle my entire life to be accepted into? A husband too weak to stand up for me? I walked away, each step firm, without looking back. The desperate gaze of Eric, the astonishment of Eleanor, and Chloe filming me no longer mattered. When I reached the door, the applause still continued from behind, but I didn't care anymore. Because I knew those applause weren't for my suffering. They were for the respect, the acknowledgement from those who truly saw me. As I stepped out of the main door of Romanos, a cold breeze suddenly swept through, but it didn't make me feel cold. On the contrary, I felt like I was stepping into a new space, where there were no judgmental eyes or mocking words. I was no longer the person they thought would sit back and endure that contempt. This was the first time I truly felt free. As I drove away from the neighborhood where I had lived for so many years, the space around me seemed to open up. New roads, new opportunities all seemed to be waiting for me. I no longer felt like a loser. I felt stronger than ever. And they would never have the chance to pull me back into the things that once made me fall. I would go to a place where I was truly valued and loved. 6 months later, I became an assistant manager at Grand Horizon Hotel. I had made it through the tough months, fought hard, and persevered all the way. By now, I was no longer the girl in a small restaurant uniform. I wore a white shirt, black dress pants, standing in front of the hotel's management office, confident and steady. My annual salary had surpassed $60,000, and more importantly, I had my own apartment, free from the scrutiny and judgment of the Miller family. Every morning, waking up in my new apartment, I felt like I had emerged from an old cocoon and turned into a vibrant butterfly. The quiet and tidy space allowed me to start my day comfortably, free from Eleanor's silent criticism and Eric's indifference. Every morning I would sit at my small dining table, sip hot coffee, read through work emails, and prepare for a day full of challenges but also full of opportunities. My boss, Jessica Martinez, was the one who had seen my potential from the very first interview. She wasn't just a mentor, she was an inspiration to me. In the beginning, I often felt stressed and confused, but Jessica was always there to guide me, helping me overcome each small challenge. "Lucy, you have a special talent for customer management," Jessica once told me in a meeting. "I believe you'll rise to higher positions soon." And just as she predicted, I did. Every VIP customer remembered me as someone trustworthy. I wasn't a room manager or a receptionist, but someone who built lasting relationships with clients, helping them feel at home even during their luxurious vacations. Once, a regular customer of the hotel said, "Lucy, you always make me feel special. I've been to many five-star hotels, but none have hospitality like here." That comment stuck with me, and I realized that I had truly achieved something great. Local media also started paying attention to me. A small article in the New York Observer published my story. From waitress to five-star hotel manager. It was the praise I had been waiting for, a proof of all my efforts over the years. From being a girl serving in a small restaurant to rebuilding my life with a dream job at one of the top hotels in New York, all of it was the result of my own work. This news quickly reached Eleanor through her friends at the country club she frequented. I couldn't help but imagine her expression when she heard the compliments about me from those people she had once used to belittle me. She would have to face the same people who had mocked my job, now having to praise the success she never thought possible. There would surely be a shift in their perceptions. A woman they once considered beneath them had now risen to success beyond their expectations. And there was no denying that this change was a sharp slap in the face to their pride. Eric continued to text me. His messages were filled with regret and longing to get back together. At first, I thought maybe he had truly changed, maybe he had finally realized what I had done for our life. But I understood that those messages were just a way to hold on, from someone who didn't want to accept that I had gone too far away from his shadow. One time when I opened my phone and saw a message from Eric, "I know I was wrong. I really love you, can you forgive me?" I swiped past it and didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to forgive, but because I didn't want to be tied to the painful memories and a man who couldn't stand by me when I needed him most. I had forgiven him a long time ago. But I couldn't continue living with the lies and the lack of respect. Day by day, I lived in the freedom I had never felt before. A new job, my own apartment, and no longer having to worry about being controlled or hearing things I didn't need to hear. I was proud of what I had done, of the life I had created. 18 months later, I stood on the stage of Grand Horizon Hotel, under bright lights, receiving the Outstanding Hospitality Leader Award. The entire room erupted in applause, the sound echoing, and I couldn't help but feel choked up. This was the pinnacle I had dreamed of for so long, but at that moment the feeling wasn't just pure joy, it was a deep understanding of the journey I had been through. The award speech ended and I walked off the stage, the medal gleaming around my neck. A video feature about my work throughout the years played on the big screen. But in that moment, as the lights blazed, I couldn't stop thinking about the pink envelope Eleanor had handed me on my birthday that year. The envelope that seemed to hold nothing but humiliation, the nightmare of my life, turned out to be my only ticket to freedom, the beginning of a new life I had never dared to dream of. Back then, when I signed the divorce papers, it was an action my whole family thought would be my end. But in reality, it was the turning point that helped me find myself. I had stopped being the woman they wanted me to be, a small wife controlled and bound by unreachable expectations. I stood up, threw it all away, and followed my own path. The image of me standing on that stage, receiving the award with the light shining on me, made me remember many painful but also empowering moments. The sleepless nights, the rejection letters, the contemptuous glares, the belittling words. All of those were things I had to overcome. But I did it. It wasn't an easy victory, but the result of thousands of tired steps, of failures that didn't discourage me. I didn't let betrayal, pain, or contempt from my family stop me on my path. I overcame it and rebuilt my life. I felt a peace within me that I had never had before. It didn't come from titles or money, but from the fact that I had found myself. The new friends, close colleagues, and VIP customers who now saw me with respect and admiration, not for what I had done in the past but for what I was doing now. No one told me that I needed to prove anything anymore, that I no longer felt embarrassed about my past, nor did I have to hide what I had been through. Every compliment I received, every appreciative glance from people I met, made me even more steadfast. And in those moments I knew I had found what I needed most in life: freedom, self-respect. Sometimes, it's the greatest challenges that help us grow and become stronger than ever. I never imagined I'd stand on that stage, never thought I'd receive this award. I smiled, then whispered, "Thank you for that birthday gift. Thanks to it I found myself. And now I am no longer the woman they wanted me to be. I have become myself, a strong, confident Lucy who knows what she deserves." I want to share this story with you so you know that sometimes cruelty is the stepping stone that helps us rise stronger than ever. Each of us can overcome the challenges in life as long as we are strong enough not to give up. Leave a like and comment if you've ever experienced betrayal or felt looked down upon, and share your story so we can learn and grow together. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next stories, the valuable lessons about life, family, and growth. Each of us can be reborn, and I hope my story will inspire those who are looking for a way out of difficulties in life. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next parts, where I will share more stories about life, family, and new opportunities.